put it into law. You know, our government's been involved with our CIA and involvement in overthrowing governments, and this for a long, long time. And, of course, last spring, I guess it was in February, where the administration admitted that they could assassinate American citizens, and now they're putting it into law. So this to me is an extremely wrong way to go. This is a giant step. This should be the biggest news going right now. It's literally legalizing martial law. And yet, you know, in our debates, how often does it come up? It didn't come up at all. You know, and then the arrogance, and this is the one thing Rand got stopped, the arrogance of them trying to push through on their voice vote, that if you go through a trial and found innocent, the government wants the right to put you in prison for life anyway. And fortunately, they wanted to do that in voice vote, and he finally got a vote on that, and that was canceled out. But that is arrogance of the administration and neglect of the Congress in using their authority and responsibility, as well as the people. That's why it's up to so many of us now to wake the people up, because they don't probably realize the significance of it. But this is big. This is big. You know, the monetary issue is big, all these things I've talked about. But this step where they can literally arrest American people, American citizens, and put them away without a trial, and you heard Lindsey Graham say, well, if they ask for a lawyer, tell them no lawyer for you. I mean, that is arrogant and bold and dangerous. Let's hope and pray that we can get that kind of stuff reversed.
Congressman, we've only got a few minutes left with you here, and I wanted to continue looking at the presidential race. What would be the first three things that you would do, the first three goals, when you got into office, when you were sworn in January of 2013?
Well, there are three big goals, but you might not be able to do as much all by yourself the first few days, but you could change the foreign policy immediately and send a message to the world that we are not looking for more wars. We're looking for, a more peaceful solution to the problems, and that is to start bringing our troops home, which would send a message that money is going to be spent at home instead of overseas, might send a message to the markets that things will be different. But then other than that, then it's be working on the budget to cut the spending. You know, my proposal that if we're serious about this, we have to cut the budget. I want to cut it first year at $1 trillion. And the other thing that must be changed is curtailing the power of the Federal Reserve to monetize debt and get something passed where we can either or both, restrain the Federal Reserve to act on its own, to print trillions and trillions of dollars and bailing out everybody around the world, as well as a thorough audit of the Federal Reserve, and then find out, find out exactly what they have been doing, and then aim for legalizing the competing currency. Some of those messages, if we change our foreign policy, bring our troops home, start balancing the budget, you don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. It's just the direction we're going. People might say, hey, this is different, and maybe some optimism would come back, which we need a lot of. Beautifully said.
What can we do on the campaign trail briefly? And then finally, I know you've written a piece today that's on your congressional site. It's also on Infowars.com about forced drug research where they're trying to psychologically screen the kids. Internet kill switch admitted in the Washington Post. All of this is happening. But what can we do to ensure that you win in Iowa, Congressman, in closing?
Well, it's continue to do what we're doing, and if they're not involved, anybody's not involved, want to go to Ron Paul 2012 and find out, because people can phone from home. They certainly can raise funds. People are going out to Iowa. There's activity, but there's a lot of electronic activity going on, with automatic phoning and different things that's done. This is very, very important. So we're in the lap here right now, so it's very important that we get maximum effort made.
I was about to say, now is the time for the maximum effort, and certainly I'm glad you ran again. Look at the incredible effect you and others have had since your last run 4 years ago. You've got a real shot if people believe and take action. Congressman Ron Paul, thank you so much for spending time with us, and go with God.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Wow, there goes Congressman Ron Paul joining us today. What an amazing interview. I got to most of my questions, but I wanted to ask him, of course, and next time we have him on, I'm going to ask him, what's going to happen if he doesn't win? I mean, what's going to happen if the New World Order continues? The world government's now admitted You can't be laughed at anymore about banker takeovers with Time and Newsweek saying Bank of the World, Goldman Sachs takes over Europe, austerity for all. Internet kill switches. The Washington Post last night, headline, Internet kill switches here. The Hill newspaper, selective Internet kill switch. I mean, it's here.
Yeah.
My question would be, under the provisions, would it be possible that an American citizen then could be declared an enemy combatant and sent to Guantanamo Bay and detained indefinitely?
I think that as long as that individual, no matter who they are, if they pose a threat to the security of the United States of America, should not be allowed to continue that threat. And I think that's the majority of American public opinion, especially in light of the facts that I continue to repeat to the senator from Kentucky. 27% of detainees who were released got back in the fight and were responsible for the deaths of Americans. We need to take every step necessary to prevent that from happening. That's for the safety and security of the men and women who are out there putting their lives on the line in our armed services. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum, or yield the floor.
Know good and well that someday there could be a government in power that is shipping its citizens off for disagreements. There are laws on the books now that characterize who might be a terrorist. Someone missing fingers on their hands is a suspect, according to the Department of Justice. Someone who has guns, someone who has ammunition that is weatherproofed, someone who has more than 7 days of food in their house can be considered a potential terrorist. If you are suspected by these activities, do you want to have the government have the ability to send you to Guantanamo Bay for indefinite detention? A suspect. We're not talking about someone who has been tried and found guilty. We're talking about someone suspected of activities. But some of the things that make you suspicious of terrorism are having food, having more than 7 days of food, missing fingers on your hand, having ammunition, having weatherproofed ammunition, having several guns at your house. Is that enough? Are you willing to sacrifice your freedom for liberty? I would argue that we should strike these detainee provisions from this bill because we are giving up our liberty. We are giving up the constitutional right to have due process before we're sent to a prison. This is very important. I think this is a constitutional liberty we should not look at and blithely sign away to the executive power or to the military. So I would call for support of the amendment that will strike the provisions on keeping detainees indefinitely, particularly the fact that we could now, for the first time, send American citizens to prisons abroad. I think that is a grave danger to our constitutional liberty, and I advise a vote to strike these provisions from the bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back my time.
Big government Republicans and Democrats were busy shredding the last vestiges of the Constitution. Senators John McCain and Carl Levin want to enact a law that would declare the entire United States of America a battlefield for the military. They're talking about inserting the Army into domestic law enforcement. Senator Lindsey Graham, who supports this bill, says, quote, "The homeland is part of the battlefield, and people can be held without trial, whether an American citizen or not." I guess he hasn't read the Constitution recently. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Macgregor joins us now. Colonel Macgregor, as always, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thanks, Judge.
I must tell you, I was utterly appalled when I saw this legislation proposed. We didn't learn about it until last night because the committee hearings on it were done in secret, even though the Constitution requires the Congress to do these things in public. And there were no actual hearings, just a bunch of members of the Senate who got together and wrote this thing. And it basically says the president can arrest whoever he wants anywhere in the United States of America and keep them without charging them with a crime, without letting them see a lawyer, without bringing them to a judge for as long as he wants. How is that consistent with the Constitution?
Well, Judge, you're the legal expert, but whenever you suspend due process, which in effect suspends the rule of law, you walk down a very dangerous path and you give authority to your government that it can then wield essentially without restraint. What worries me is that we'll end up creating categories of people who are then subject to arbitrary arrest. And that's dangerous because we don't know how those categories will be defined or interpreted in the future. All in all, it's a disaster, and it's something that should be defeated.
One day the President of the United States, whomever he or she might be, might say, okay, let's arrest that guy.
Suppose the president decided that one of his political opponents was an enemy of the state. He could make that person disappear. Sounds fanciful, sounds crazy, but it's true.